in 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution is an electrolyte powder that you mix with water. It was formulated by a doctor for quick absorption. I work in the desert, and it only takes a few hours in the heat, wearing body armor, carrying around a bunch of gear before I start feeling like crap and fall behind the curve in dehydration. Drip Drop keeps you in the fight so you can finish the mission and rehab for the next one. Go get you some at dripdrop.com or on Amazon, or ask your supply guy to find it for you.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Ammo is getting hard to find these days, and you need to stay proficient by working your dry fire training. Dry Fire Mag solves the common and annoying problem in dry fire training of constantly having to rack the slide to reset the trigger. With this thing, all you do is clear your weapon, load the training magazine, and get to work. Check them out at dryfiremag.com. One of my pet peeves when we talk about leadership is when I hear this notion that you want to be a leader and not just a manager. That's amateur hour stuff. You need to be both if you want to run anything effectively. And management may not sound very tactical, but guess what? You have to manage a team. You have to manage any organization, military, law enforcement. You have to run your resources, right? And you can be the most charismatic, inspirational, motivational, transactional, transformational leader in the world. And if you waste my time because you couldn't manage your way out of a paper bag, I'm going to go find meaningful work elsewhere. If you want my respect and my devotion, if you want to inspire me with how empowered and appreciated I am, make good use of my time. Management, to me, is the art and science of coordinating and allocating your resources to meet a goal. Those resources can take a lot of forms. They could be time, money, combat power, information, space in an office, gigabytes of bandwidth, jet fuel, ammunition. That's all resources that you have to manage and prioritize and sequence, right? How do you do it? Well, one of the problems I have seen in the military especially is we give young officers all kinds of cool leadership training. We teach them how to win a nuclear war in space, how to cross a river of molten hot lava using just a rope and an ammo can and 3 motivated troopers. But we never teach them how to run an office. And then we immediately send them to an office. Oh yeah, you went to Rangers training? That's cool. Guess what? You're going to be the executive officer, the guy who gets the coffee for the colonel. That's part of being an officer, is working in offices. And even as a military pilot, I spend very little time flying planes. And I've flown a good share of planes at this point, but I spend a whole lot of time running in an office. I've spent approximately, 69 of the last 20 years of my military career doing important officer things in an office. And I have learned some things along the way, mostly the hard way. So I wanted to share some lessons with you, right? How do you do this? How do you lead in an office environment? How do you manage resources in that environment? And when I say office, I don't necessarily mean a big high-rise building full of computers and cubicles. This could be just a function anywhere. This could be your shift at work at your local law enforcement agency, or it could be at the McDonald's you work at, or whatever. Don't take the term office too literally. This is any function where you have to work and get work done, especially administrative side of the work. And again, that might not sound sexy, but it's the important stuff. The good office work is how you get the permission to do the cool stuff. That's what staffing is, right? We manage risk and do the due diligence in order to go do the dangerous things, or to get the funding for the dangerous things, or to get the buy-in or political buy-in for those things. That's all office work. And it is leadership. You have to lead up. You have to lead out. You have to get cooperation from other agencies. Oh, that's cool. You want to do this cool thing with the FBI? Well, you got to convince the FBI it's a good idea. That's office work. That's admin. Maybe it's an email or relationship. So you got to do it. But speaking of sexy, I asked Mike, hey man, do you have any inputs for this episode? Do you want to be in on it? And Mike's like, no. I'm good on office stuff. So this will just be me. So first thing I want to emphasize, and this is a thing I've been thinking about a lot. I've been thinking about how to address this in the podcast, is lead less. That doesn't mean don't lead or to go hands off, but you need to recognize when you have relatively motivated, capable, competent professionals that you're working with. And often you do. It may not feel like it, but often you do. You probably don't need to crawl up their asses about what intrinsically motivates them. You probably need to set them on a task, make sure they're resourced appropriately, get out of their way, and get obstacles out of their way. I've found that a lot of leaders actually really struggle with that. We hire commanders who are extroverted people persons who want to, lead. I had a boss once who sat right behind me for 8 straight hours of my workday asking me questions about my processes. No work got done during that time. He just convinced me that he's a moron. That's about all I got from it. So think about that. Think about how much do you need to lead and be dynamic about it. Consider who you're working with, how competent, how motivated are they, and then make adjustments according to who you're working around, right? So you get into an office and you're thinking well, what do I do? First day. Okay, you're meeting your people, you're figuring out what your role is and what authority you have or don't have. That's cool. But in any office anywhere, I can't speak for business because I haven't done a whole lot of it, right? Or law enforcement, but I can say at least for military environments, the one resources you actually have some control over is time. That means a lot of what you manage is a calendar. So take the calendar really seriously. And that doesn't mean have 5 different calendars, which is a easy thing to do in an office. Maybe have 1 or 2, right? You need to put some thought into what is on the office's calendar and what format it should take. Are we talking a big old whiteboard or how far of an outlook? Do you work in days at a time, weeks at a time, months at a time, years at a time? Depends on the office, depends on the mission. Maybe have an external looking calendar, what are our deliverables, our big deadlines to outside organizations, and an internal calendar. When does Bob take his Christmas vacation? We should probably get that written down somewhere, right? Managing the time is a big deal. This is the essence of management is time, because like I said, that's the one thing you actually have some authority over, right? I spent a year in a current operations office as a lieutenant, where most of my job, in theory, it was supposed to plan missions that were going to go that week. So we were making arrangements for range time and individual mission tasks that we were going to practice and what crews were going to fly them. That's important stuff. That is the heart of a flying squadron, is that current operations function. But you know what I mostly did? I mostly transcribed. I mostly took stuff off the whiteboard and typed it into an Outlook calendar. And then I had to type it again on a different network into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I had to type it again onto the flight scheduling software that was proprietary and never worked. Most of what I did was data entry over and over and over. That's a broken process. And it is, I think, military-wide. I think the entire Department of Defense struggles with that, as far as I know. If someone has cracked the code, please shoot us a message on the Facebook page. I would love to hear about it. And that is exactly the kind of thing you can help fix as a leader. The broken process of making a human do that busy work that could easily be automated and didn't need to be done probably in the first place. That's exactly the kind of thing you can control. But I do want you to really think about your calendar and put some real time and effort into how it functions, what form it takes, what format you use, because controlling time is like that's it. That's the secret code here, is time. Speaking of time and wasting it, I hate meetings. I seriously, I hate them, with a passion. I can count on maybe 3 fingers, and I'll let you guess which ones, the number of times I was glad we had a meeting instead of an email. Remember that usually the one resource you have any control over is time and the scheduling of your people. Time is the resource you manage. It is your investment. Time is your investment to get return on. So if you're going to have a meeting, then you need to make that meeting count. Make the goal and the agenda clear. What is the goal? Is the goal to inform everybody of something? Is it to solve a specific problem? Is it to get you an update, or is it to give an update to your team? Is it to do a deep dive on one particular issue? Is it to build relationships across stakeholders? Make that clear. Make sure everyone who walks into the meeting knows why they walked into the meeting. And it might sound obvious to you, but you'd be surprised, especially with new folks. They may not necessarily know what the point was or what they were supposed to tell you at that meeting. And again, different types of meetings. And you can arrange them differently. You can tailor those meetings. You can tailor the group, who's invited, who's required. You can tailor the room. Do you need a big conference table, or could you maybe do this meeting at, I don't know, a Starbucks or something, right? If you have slides, put some thought into what needs to be on those slides and what doesn't need to be on the slides. And in general, you probably need more one-on-one meetings, like sit down with one person in your office, and fewer big group sessions. It is hard to get things done. It's hard to, especially for some personalities, to find their voice in a big group. Sometimes smaller group sessions will get you more return on your time investment. So speaking of hating meetings, because it drives me nuts. I recently heard a public relations expert, this guy, mover and shaker, he consults for the Pentagon and a bunch of other organizations. He once said, when you don't have any real power, organizational power, usually the one power you have is the authority to convene a meeting. So that's what powerless groups do. They meet and think about things. That should be a clue, right? Meetings are an area where I've actually seen a lot of leaders fall on their faces, because that's often where they interact with their teams, right? Leaders want to lead. They want to see their troops, and they want to be seen by their troops. So they hold a meeting. That sounds like a great chance to collaborate and innovate. But again, remember that time is the one resource you control, and you need to fiercely guard your people's time. I would say, again, if you want me to respect you, show me the respect of preserving my time and keeping me gainfully employed doing something that matters, right? Understand that if you ask your subordinates to provide a slide for a meeting, you're taking up their time, right? They have to prepare that slide. They have to leave their work, whatever it was they were doing, and physically usually go to the meeting or disconnect from whatever they were doing and tune into your meeting through, the video chat programs. And then they have to take the time in the meeting, which often goes long. So when you convene a meeting, you're breaking up someone else's schedule, and that's really important. And it's tough sometimes for leaders and managers to really understand the impact that has. And you need to have situational awareness and empathy to recognize how disruptive it really is. In fact, I'm going to read you an excerpt from an article by a guy named Paul Graham. I don't know him well, but I was really impressed by this one article. We're going to link to the article in the show notes, but you can find the article on paulgraham.com. I can't vouch for him. I don't know him, but I was impressed by this article. And one of the things he talked about is how computer programmers especially struggle with meetings. He said one reason programmers dislike meetings so much is that they're on a different type of schedule from other people. Meetings cost them more. There are 2 fundamental types of schedule, which I'll call the manager's schedule and the maker's schedule. The manager's schedule is for bosses. It's embodied in the traditional appointment book, right? With each day cut into 1-hour intervals. You can block off several hours for a single task if you need to, but by default, you change what you're doing about every hour. When you use time that way, It's merely a practical problem to meet with someone. Find an open slot in your schedule, book them, and you're done. Most powerful people are on a manager's schedule. It's the schedule of command. But there's another way of using time that's common among people who make things. Programmers and writers, for example. They generally prefer to use time in units of half a day at least. You can't write a program well in units of an hour. It just doesn't work that way, right? That's barely enough time to get started. When you're operating on the maker's schedule, meetings are a disaster. A single meeting can blow a whole afternoon by breaking it into pieces. 2 pieces, each too small to do anything hard in. Plus, you have to remember to go to the meeting. That's no problem for someone on a manager's schedule. There's always something coming on the next hour, so they already know they have a next thing. The only question is what? But when someone's on the maker schedule and has a meeting, they have to think about it. For someone on the maker schedule, having a meeting is like throwing an exception. It doesn't merely cause you to switch from one task to another. It changes the mode in which you work. Again, that was Paul Graham. I believe the article's titled Maker's Schedule. We'll link to it in the show notes. But I thought that was actually really well-worded and insightful about why some people really, really love meetings and some people really hate them. And you could say it's about introversion, extroversion. I think that does play a role. But I have seen that same thing where someone who is doing the work has to stop what they're doing to go talk about it instead of doing it. And that gets you frustration and resent, especially when the meeting isn't real productive, right? So you need to make that meeting productive, like make a point of it. The next resource, kind of the most obvious resource in most cases, is money, right? When you run an office, you're also running a budget, whether you know it or not. And that's a lot more obvious on the business side. In the military, sometimes like the money, this is going to sound weird, but it's true. The money is almost like pretend. Because you don't ever see it. You're not the guy usually cutting the check. Sometimes you're making commitments of funds, but at the end of the day, that money's moving like in the background, right? And you don't have to go earn more money. More money just shows up by way of the budgeting process, right? And especially as a young officer, it just seems like magic. And even as an old officer, sometimes it seems like that too. You need to understand the money at every level. What are you spending money on? Where is the money coming from? Like which pot of money, which allocation of money are you using? Do you need more money? The answer is usually yes, but that's not good enough. You have to be able to explain it, right? And you need to be able to forecast what money you're going to need in the future. It is way easier to get money a couple of fiscal years out than to get it next week. Usually. So right away, if you're running an office, particularly in the military, like go find the guy who understands the money and sit down with them and understand what they understand. It will save you a lot of pain. One of the most important things you provide as a leader, your value proposition to the organization, if you want to put it in terms like that, is clarity of purpose. Clarity is something you provide. Right? Providing clarity to your subordinates. Help them understand the explicit tasks. This is what we do here. And the implied tasks. These are all the things we also have to do here to make those things work. Right? Help them be clear on their priorities. You help clarify what's urgent versus what's important. You set deadlines and milestones. You're there to develop out the mission and the vision. The mission is the task you're there to perform. Serve a tasty burger. The vision is your aspiration for where you're trying to go with the organization. We want to be the premier burger serving organization, right? Whatever. But think about that. Think about, you might understand real well what your organization does. And if you don't, you need to figure it out. You might understand real well how you connect into the rest of the bigger institution that you're in. But it's actually really unlikely that the lowest guys on the ladder understand what you understand or see or hear what you're seeing and hearing. So providing them some clarity is one of the most valuable things you can do for them. Speaking of clarity, this often comes up the most in terms of tasking. When you assign a task, how do you do it? A surprising number of bosses task by what I call drive-by. Hey, Bob, need you to do this. Oh yeah, we need to figure out the budget for next year. That's not a tasking. That's a drive-by. You need to assign one person to be in charge of a task and to be accountable for it. You need to assign a deadline, or at minimum like an update deadline, right? You need to allocate resources to it. Which people are going to help? How much money is going to go into it? And preferably, try to put all of this in writing for lots of reasons. You also owe some prioritization on that task. Do I need to drop everything to chase this task down? Do you want me to back burner this task, but keep it on the radar, keep it warm for you? If so, you need to tell me, right? And consider how many tasks you're giving to each person, right? About the most any one person can realistically handle is like maybe 4 things. And that's like someone who really knows what they're doing can handle about 4 things. Some people struggle with 1 thing, right? That's also true for supervision. A good leader can usually handle about 4 sub leaders or sub organizations. Right. So no more than 4 things to do at a time, no more than 4 people to manage. That will keep it reasonable. So think about that in how you divide up functions and tasks and supervision. And while you're doing this, watch for hidden tasks and background tasks, like those insidious little ankle biter tasks that kind of drain time and productivity away. The stuff that, you have to do to keep the office running, but don't really buy you anything, right? Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about talent management. It's a big deal, right? People are our main resource. That's true. How do you find them? How do you select for them? How do you train them? How do you develop them? How do you keep them? And then how do you offboard them in a way that is ultimately helpful to you and to your cause, right? Talent management. So find our talent management episode. I think it's a good one. But consider it's a big deal. It's a big part of your management thing is handling the talent and how to assemble a diverse team for synergistic effects. This management stuff's that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Who do you assign which tasks to? We talked about the tasking thing. Well, maybe you have 1 winner on your team and 5 losers. It's really tempting to put all your tasks on the 1 winner, the guy who get things done or the gal who get things done. Well, how do you think that's going to go in the long run? You keep giving them all of the tasks, and the other 4 people just sit there and, hang out at the water cooler. That doesn't work. You're going to burn out the 1 person, and the other people are going to resent the 1 person who's doing the work. So you have to grow the team. Therein lies the magic of leadership, right? You have to scout for and recruit talent. You have to give your winners reasons to stay and make sure you aren't giving them reasons to leave. And just as an example, I've watched a lot of very talented aviators walk out the door, right? They go fly for the airlines. And it's tempting to say, well, yeah, you make a lot more money that way. We make pretty good money as military aviators. We make, I would say, decent money. Not maybe as much as the airlines do, but we also don't have a lot of the uncertainty that the airlines do with the economy, right? So that's, for many of us, not really that compelling. But I've watched a lot of pilots walk out the door, and a lot of it is they feel like their time and effort's being wasted. They feel like they're getting sent on year-long deployments with nothing to show for it. They're watching the impact that kind of lifestyle has on their families. And that's tough. It's tough, honestly, experiencing that. And it's also tough watching those guys walk out the door, right? And just as an example, like I've spent personally a surprising amount of time in the military putting, I kid you not, toilet paper in the shitters at my office. And that's not just the organization I'm in now. I've several assignments. I've gone through that. I'm happy to do it. I'm not above it, right? Like, you know, I use the facilities. I might as well help out, right? But the taxpayers spent millions of dollars training educating, and seasoning a pilot. And they have, I think, a picture in their head of what that gets them, right? The return on investment. And it's frankly disturbing how much of my energy as a military aviator gets spent doing custodial work because we have mismanaged the taxpayer-funded custodial contracts across DoD for decades. Yeah, it's a task. It needs to get done. I'm not above it. Like I said, I'm happy to do it. But it's a good example of like a hidden task, right? That's not a task. That's not in my mission statement in whatever office I've been in. It's just a thing that needs to get done, right? And I make a point of not complaining about it. I make a point of leading by example, and maybe some other people will also take on that role. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that I thought that was a good use of my time or my tax dollars, right? And think of all of the things that you expect people in your office to just do or just put up with. That is the kind of thing that managers have an eye for. Good ones notice it and fix it, right?
This is Mike, and I just want to jump in real quick to announce our new partnership with Brink Drones. Brink has created life-saving capabilities in a drone that can break windows, fly into houses and confined spaces, and even crash into things and stay in the air with advanced pilot assistance that does not use GPS. Brink drones are built in the USA. It has night vision and IR that can function in blacked out and zero light conditions. It can flip itself back over, and it is a flying cell phone with two-way communication and a live video feed. It can even carry and drop off items for hostage negotiators with the payload feature. Brink has a really cool and compelling heritage that came to be after the 1 October mass shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and they are committed in their mission to leverage technology to save lives. And I can tell you firsthand that their drones will do just that by flying into places that are too dangerous to risk human lives. If you work in public safety, your agency needs to see what this drone can do. Go check out Brink Drones at brinkdrones.com, or feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to tell you all about them. Again, that's Brink, BRINC, drones.com.
Speaking of noticing and fixing procedures and processes, one of the things you have to do as a manager is understand the processes that are at work in your office, right? What is it that you do? What is it that you produce? How do you go about doing your business, right? And you as a manager codify those into business practices, as in, this is how we do business. Part of that job is to identify and fix fucked up processes. And you have to capture the procedures into writing so that you can replicate those processes and train others to execute them. You might hear about programs to like improve your processes, like Six Sigma and Total Quality Management and Lean and Kaizen, and there's like 100 other ones, right? And those all have some value when they fit your situation well. Usually they're tailored to software development or factory production, and those are good. Like, some of them are great, honestly. But you don't need that to do what I'm telling you. As an example, if your computer doesn't work, and the only way to get your computer fixed is to submit a trouble ticket to the IT department on your computer that doesn't work, you don't need a black belt in Six Sigma to tell you that process sucks and needs to get fixed, right? That's the kind of thing you have to notice as a manager. That's the kind of thing you have to force as a manager. Hey, as a procedure, we're not going to make you log into a computer that isn't working to tell the IT guys that your computer isn't working. And you don't have to be a graduate of West Point with honors to catch that, right? Best of the best. You have to be a human being who understands, like, here's what right looks like. Let's get toward it, right? And when you're working on procedures and processes, one of the big areas to focus on is how you want information to move around the office. That might sound squishy, but hang with me, right? Do you want to be carbon copied on every email? Every email? There are bosses and managers who absolutely want that, right? And that's fine, but that's going to cost you something. One of my preferred business practices is that if I am reaching outside of my organization, if I'm reaching out to a partner force, I'm going to carbon copy or blind carbon copy, CC or BCC, my boss. Because one of my personal rules in an office is I never want to let my boss get surprised. right? Separately, when I email my boss directly, I always put in the subject line what I need from them, right? I'll put the word awareness or advocacy or decision or action, right, in the subject line of the email so that they know right away, like, what's the deal here? And I try to be accurate, brief, and clear when I email them. I always say, hey, boss, bottom line up front. I say that bluff, bottom line up front. Here's what's going on. Here's why it matters to you. Here's what I think you should do about it, right? And I try to make it very clear what I want him or her to do. Speaking of telling people what to do, what decisions can be made and at what level? That's one of the things you get to decide largely as a manager or a boss or a leader or a commander, right? And it sounds good to say you empowered your workers. Man, bosses love to empower workers. But really, what decisions do they get to make versus what decisions do you have to make? Some decisions are on you, right? Like they have to be. And there's a saying, you can delegate authority, but not responsibility. Like at the end of the day, it's still your problem, right? But explain to your people what authority they actually have. They may not know. It's actually sometimes surprising how much the worker bees don't know stuff like that. Do you have a way you want decisions made? Do you want everything in writing? Are you okay with people doing a drive-by? Hey, boss, are you cool with this, right? Who needs to buy in? How much agreement do I have to have across the office before we slap the table on something? And if I need a decision from my boss, and I talked about this a little bit, I'm talking about how I email my boss, but it's bigger than just the email, right? I owe my boss a brief explanation of the problem. I owe some options, and I owe a recommendation. I don't bring my boss a problem unless I already have a solution. Now, some things that I can convey in an email. Hey, boss, here's what's up. Here's the bottom line. Here's what happened. Here's what I need you to do about it. I need you to call this guy and, get their buy-in on this. Something like that. If it's more complicated or more nuanced or takes some explanation, then I get on my boss's calendar and I hold a meeting. But then I'm driving it and it's a one-on-one, right? And I bring whatever stakeholders need to be there. And I make it clear, hey, boss, this is a decision meeting. At the end of this, I need to know from you whether we're going to do option 1 or option 2, right? Part of leading is leading up. And good staff officers and good assertive employees anywhere can do that, and they can do it smoothly. Another topic that you have some real say over is quality control in your office, right? You're the final stop on whatever processes your office runs. The product of your office has your name on it, so make sure it reflects you. If your office is a Pizza Hut, then you're checking the pizzas as they go out. Are they cooked? Is there a dead rat in the pizza box, right? And it's not just the product, whatever the product is. It's also stuff like communications, presentations, emails. You set how much polish and professionalism you want those to display. Is it okay to send emails that are full of spelling and grammar errors? In some places it is, right? Some places it's not. Is it okay to include a motivational quote in the bottom of your signature block? What about a Bible verse? You set kind of those standards for how things that leave your office need to look and feel and what they convey, right? How do we answer the phone? That quality of customer service is a big thing that you have some say in. As far as things that go out, who needs to see a document or a presentation or the product before it goes public? And then as they're reviewing it, how much time does each stakeholder get to sit and think about their review before they have to make corrections or pass it on? Right? And that's a process thing, but that's an area where if you make it too short, you lose some quality. If you make it too long, you lose production. Right? And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. We could be talking about scheduling close air support training for A10s and F16s. We could be talking about, producing sunglasses. It doesn't matter what it is we're talking about. You have some say in that. How long are we giving the quality control and review process? And what are we doing during that process? Another thing you need to be thoughtful about is the physical layout of the office. And it may not feel like you have control over that, right? You just showed up. The desks are where they are. That's just part of the scenery. That's one of the problems, is it's part of the scenery. And after a while, it's just taken as a given. Well, you don't have to change everything all the time right away. I've had some bosses that do that, and they're exhausting. But do take a look around and see, hey, is the layout helping us or hurting us? And ask the people who work there, who've worked there for a while. They might know some things you don't, right? One thing I've noticed in the last 10 years is this big push toward open layouts, right? A big bullpen, all the desks pushed against the wall, and that way everyone can face into the room and talk to each other. That's designed to encourage collaboration. Well, it might be counterintuitive, but I've seen it do the opposite of that. Good collaboration sometimes takes some privacy. You need to have private meetings and conversations. I need to be able to take a phone call without disturbing the dude next to me. I need walls where I can put up a whiteboard or a calendar and stuff like that. Walls hurts the feelings of middle managers who want to see their people and feel like they're quote unquote breaking down walls. Well, that just doesn't work. At least in my experience, it doesn't, right? And it might depend on what your office produces or what its function is or the personalities in it. That's where you kind of got to read the room a little bit. But man, give me a private office space. And then also give me some collaborative spaces where I can link up and work and do meetings when I need to. And if you really want collaboration, put some caffeine in those spaces. Get the coffee maker going. And also think about movement. Is it hard to get around the office? How many steps does it take to get to the break room or the restroom or the printer? There's been a push in some offices I've been in to have only one printer in the whole office, one big shared printer. Well, there's some problems with that. One is you get a single point of failure. If that printer goes down, now I'm going down the hall or to another building to get stuff out of the printer. That's a problem. And you might be like, oh, paperless. Yeah, some things still go on paper, even though it's 2023. But consider, who needs to get up out of their seat to talk to who, and maybe you can put those people together, right? While you're laying out the office, think about the office supplies. They're actually a bigger deal than you might think. And it's funny to joke about the red stapler and stuff. I asked a group of my friends who work in all kinds of different offices what the most critical office supplies were. And the answers were funny. They didn't all agree. I thought that was funny. But they all made it clear that office supplies were a big deal to them, right? That's the core tool that they use to do their jobs. One of the most important things is a working computer, a working goddamn printer and copier. The IT stuff is a big deal, especially as we go heavier and heavier into the IT stuff. And that tech stuff, that can be an insidious time sink for the staff. If the printer runs out of ink or paper, do they have to go downstairs, fill out a form, negotiate with the supply guy to get more ink? That takes time. And time is a big deal, right? Consider, if you want collaboration and shared awareness, think about putting up a big-ass calendar on the wall. And maybe some whiteboards. And the good markers. If you want creativity and innovation, give me some Post-it notes. And they make Post-it notes that are like a couple of feet wide by a couple feet tall. They're like whiteboard style Post-it notes. Those are awesome. And a whiteboard, right? Flat screens are cool. And a lot of people are, getting better at integrating tech and want that kind of modern look and feel of an office. That's important, right? So they put flat screens where the whiteboards used to be. The problem is I have a hard time scribbling on flat screens. I still do sometimes. And maybe have a mix, cater to the techies and cater to the fuzzies. That might help you too. I mentioned caffeine. The caffeine's no joke. I'll tell you what, you might save $20 a month by like not buying coffee beans for the office, and that's fine. Maybe that's your bottom line or whatever. But how many hours are you losing when people leave the office to go hit up Starbucks? Just get some caffeine in there. Doesn't matter how you do it. Doesn't have to be fancy, but caffeinate the troops, right? Another one is it is really tempting to go paperless, but I'll tell you what, there's some things about paper. Paper doesn't forget. Paper doesn't get ransomware or hacked. There are some things I like having printed out, right? And it's not just because I'm old school. One of the things that affects me is often I work in secure spaces where I can't take personal electronics in. I can't take my iPad. I can't take my cell phone. So having some good notepads around, legal pads, that kind of thing, the stack of Post-it notes, and more than you think you need. Same with pens. Pens are cheap. Buy 1 billion of them, right? You don't want to lose that good idea because someone didn't write something down, or lose that opportunity because they didn't write down the name and phone number of who just called. Okay. One issue that has come up in management in the last couple of years is handling your virtual people, right? The people who are teleworking. And there are some best practices that have evolved, right? You really do need some regular check-ins. It doesn't have to be a big formal meeting. They should be check-ins. Give them a phone call. Do a little FaceTime message with them, right? Get the deep dive going. And as a suggestion, when you can, set an interval to see those folks in real life from time to time. Right? And maybe they work on the other side of the country. That's fine. Or they have a family, or they have a bunch of other considerations in their life. All good. To the extent you can, try to see them face to face. Find a way. I think that will help. And it doesn't have to be constant. It doesn't have to be weekly, but figure out what that interval needs to be. And make that expectation clear to them. Hey, I need to see you once a month, or I need to see you once a week, or I need to see you twice a year. Whatever that is, set it, make it clear, and find a way to help enable that. My last thought on office leadership and management, one of the best pieces of advice that I have heard over the years and I've given to young officers is I've seen the military forgive a lot of bad decision making and mistakes and human error. I've seen them forgive actually some pretty serious mistakes and human error. But the stuff that the military does not forgive well is screwing around with money, secrets, weapons, switches that have red plastic guards on them, and the young women who work in the office. Those are things the military is not going to forgive you for, right? Screwing around with money, secrets, weapons, red guarded switches, and the young airmen. So think about that as far as how you manage and how you lead. Don't screw around with the money. Do maintain the security of the office. Don't lose a rifle. Don't lose a bomb. and manage your office with some professionalism and dignity, and make it a good place to work. And I think that will go a long way. And respect takes a lot of forms. Part of it is literally how you treat the humans in the office, the women in the office, the men in the office. And it's not just the human relations stuff. It's also like not wasting their time. And you're going to have to interact with people, right? That's leadership. That's management. Think about, how do you give positive feedback? How do you give negative feedback? And there are, sayings like, praise in public and correct in private. That's true. But go a little further than that. One book I grew up with that I really liked, that drove a lot of how I think about management, is 1 Minute Manager. That, can I give quick feedback? Can I give quick praise and quick correction? And then move on, get back into the productivity thing. I think that will help. So hopefully you learned something. Again, running an office, doing the admin stuff, not sexy, but I'll tell you what, that gets you the money or the approval to do the sexy stuff, to do the cool, multilateral ninja training that you want to do, whatever it is. Often it starts with how you send emails. So send them well. Churn you on. Have a good one.
All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight. This episode is brought to you by Right-On Optics. Right-On is bringing you high-quality glass at a great value. I use and trust their scopes, binoculars, and red dot sights, and you can too with their unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their gear, they will replace it, not repair it. Finish up your next build and keep a little extra cash on hand for ammo so you can actually go out and shoot that thing. Find your next optic at rightonoptics.com.
This episode is also brought to you by ManaSex. We've talked a lot about the tactical fantasy on this podcast, and one of the quickest ways to break your tactical fantasies and actually improve your performance is by getting real feedback. One of the ways you can do that is with ManaSex. You're not going to get better at shooting on your own. You need practice, data, and coaching. And you need to make the most of your ammo with good live and dry fire training. Manus is a family of training devices that tracks you while you train. It times and tracks everything you do in a drill and coaches you as you go. It is indispensable to taking your shooting to the next level. Go find them on manasex.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can head over to Patreon, give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. If you want to interact with us, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email info@tacticaltangents.com. And one last thing, our Facebook discussion group. We've got a little group going on Facebook. If you go to the groups tab on our page, you can join it. We've got more followers on our page than we have in the group. So I know there's some of you out there following the Facebook page that are on Facebook that are not in the group. Lots of like-minded people in there. So come hang out with us. All right. That's all we got. Good talk.